Y'all, I done watched season 2 of them on Amazon Prime. This new season is called The Scare. And when I tell y'all I had to sleep with a nightlight for at least 2 to 3 days after I finished that season, y'all got to go to hell. What's up, everybody? It's your girl Indescribable, aka Geraldine Lake, checking in to give you part 2 of my deep dive analysis of them on Amazon Prime. So welcome back. Okay, if you haven't watched part 1 yet, go do that first. I'll wait. All right, now for those of you who are caught up, let's talk about season 2. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Okay, when I first saw that there was a second season, I was like, but how you gonna top what y'all already did? Okay, and the answer is you don't. You don't try to top it. You go somewhere completely different and you ask an even harder question. Season 1 was about racism that showed up with a lawn chair and a megaphone. Loud, organized, and impossible to ignore. But season 2 is about racism that shows up with a badge and a briefcase and a performance review. And in some ways, that can be scarier. So let's get into it. The year is 1991. The city is Los Angeles. And if you know your history, then you already know where we going with this, okay? The Rodney King video has just been released. 4 LAPD officers beat a black man on camera. The whole country saw it, and everyone is waiting to see if those officers will face any consequences. Spoiler alert, they do not, okay? And in 1992, Los Angeles erupts, okay? Season 2 is set right in that window. The tape exists, the trial hasn't happened yet, but the city is basically a pressure cooker and everybody knows it. The LAPD in this moment is not some neutral institution. It has a decades-long documented history of brutalizing black and brown communities. Corruption, planted evidence, officers covering for other officers, truly a culture that protects itself at all costs. And our main character is a black woman who works for that department. Now, that is the whole tension of season 2 before a single ghost even shows up, y'all. Detective Dawn Reeve is played by the same woman who played Lucky Emery in season 1. So right off the bat, I'm like, well, how she look the same almost a half a century later? Because black don't crack, okay? Anyway, stay focused. Dawn is a homicide detective. She's good at her job, like genuinely excellent at her job, and she's grinding in a workplace where her colleagues don't really respect her. Her community doesn't trust her, and the institution that she works for is actively harming the people that she is trying to serve. Her colleague McKenna spends the whole season trying to undermine her. He dismisses her work, he uses her race and her gender against her. He is the kind of white male mediocrity that fails upward and resents anyone more competent than him. For reference, that's basically everybody, okay? Meanwhile, her community sees the badge before they see her. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong to be suspicious of it, okay? The same department she works for is out here beating people on camera. I mean, Dawn is truly stuck in what I would describe as the impossible position. She genuinely believes she can do more good from inside than outside, and she tells herself that. But the show asks the real question, can you really separate yourself from the institution that you represent, even if your intentions are good? And the answer the show gives is not really. No, you cannot. By the end of the season, Dawn has to reckon with the fact that the badge has costs that she didn't fully account for. That she has been, in some ways, part of a chain of harm, even while trying to stop it. The case that kicks everything off is the murder of a foster home mother, found in a way that has even the most seasoned detectives truly shaken. And Dawn digs deeper. More bodies start appearing, all connected to the foster care system. The killer turns out to be a man named Edmund Gaines. Now, he got red hair, and he is doing supernatural things that a regular human just physically cannot do. And here is where the show does something that I genuinely respect. It uses the horror of the foster care system, a system that already disproportionately fails black children as part of a bigger argument about what racism does across generations. Edmund grew up being abused, locked in boxes, barely treated like a human being. The system that was supposed to protect him did exactly the opposite. And the rage that came out of all of that trauma became fuel for what he turned into. The show is not saying that Edmund is innocent. It's saying that Edmund is what happens when a society decides that certain children don't matter and then build institutions to warehouse those children instead of protecting them. The monster is not Edmund. The monster is everything that created him. And Edmund is the most layered character character, I think, in either season. I don't know if we talk about him enough. Edmund is Dawn's twin brother. That big reveal, happens in season 2. And once you know that, it kind of changes your perspective on everything. They were both in that abusive foster home together. They survived it side by side, and then Pam Grier's character, Athena, came and adopted them. She kept Dawn, and she sent Edmund back. Back, y'all, to the foster home, to the woman who was locking them in boxes. And then to make sure that Dawn didn't ask any questions, Athena told a 3-year-old girl that Edmund was her imaginary friend, that she never had a brother and that it was all in her head. Y'all, think about what that probably did to Edmund. Now, he knows his sister exists, and he knows she's out there living a life somewhere safe and probably loved with a family and a future, and she don't even know that he's real. His whole supernatural rampage is underneath all the horror. Just a man trying to make himself known to the one person in the world who should have known him. His victims are people connected to the patterns of his abuse. It's grief, it's rage, it's abandonment, all tangled together in something truly horrifying. Edmund is a victim who became a monster because nobody stopped the cycle before it consumed him. The show wants you to hold both of those things at once, and it doesn't let you off the hook. Now, I do want to talk about Pam Grier's character, Athena, specifically because she represents a type of parent that is real but very rarely examined, okay? She ain't a bad person, and she truly does love Dawn, but she gave a child a home and a future and real care, and also made a selfish choice. She kept one kid and returned the other, and then she spent decades building a wall full of lies to avoid having to face it. She didn't gaslight Dawn to be cruel. She did it because she couldn't live with what she had done. And the easiest way to avoid the guilt was to erase the evidence of the choice. But here's the thing about well-meaning harm. It still causes harm. Athena's choice to protect herself from her own guilt meant Edmund suffered alone for decades while Dawn grew up not even knowing he existed. And the show holds Athena accountable for that without making her a villain. She is someone who made a harmful choice, justified it to herself as kindness, and lived with the consequences privately while Edmund lived with them publicly. That is a very specific kind of complicity, and the show names it clearly. Now let's talk about racism with a badge, because the LAPD was the real villain, okay? I want to talk about McKenna for just a second because he deserves his own section. McKenna is not a supernatural threat, but he is a very real one. He is a white colleague that has climbed every ladder available to him, not because he is exceptional at his job, but because the institution rewards people who look like him and think like him and ask no uncomfortable questions. He is threatened by Dawn not just because she's a black woman, but because her competence exposes what he actually is. And his response is to do everything in his power to discredit her, undermine her, and at the end of the season, frame her for murders he knows she didn't commit. He would rather pin killings on a black woman detective than admit that she outworked him. And the show draws a direct line between McKenna's behavior and the same institutional culture that allowed 4 officers to beat Rodney King on camera and still get away with it. These aren't individual bad apples, but it's a system that grows when it's left to its own values. Now, Dawn's act of killing McKenna in self-defense at the end is both practically necessary and symbolically true. You can't survive inside an institution where people like him hold power. And yet, killing McKenna does not fix the institution. The badge still represents the same things it represented before she put it on. I want to come back to something we talked about in season 1 because season 2 takes it in a totally different direction. Betty Wendell in season 1 was an active aggressor. She organized, she led, she chose cruelty with intention. Season 2 doesn't have a Betty, but it has something arguably more insidious, okay? Institutions run by people who believed they were helping. The foster care system that destroyed Edmund was not run by people who woke up wanting to hurt black children. It was run by people who processed paperwork and didn't look too closely and decided some losses were acceptable. Social workers who moved on to the next case, officials who approved placements without following up. You don't have to hate black children to participate in a system that harms them. You just have to not care enough to stop it. That indifference has historically fallen hardest on black families, not because someone sat down and designed it that way, but because the system was built inside a racist society and it absorbed those values without anyone having to announce them out loud. The difference between Betty and these faceless institutional actors is that Betty at least had to choose to cause harm every single day, and the people in season 2 cause harm by doing nothing. The supernatural entity at the center of season 2 is called the scare. And it's not a ghost in the way we actually think about ghosts. The scare feeds on fear. It finds people who are already broken open by what the world has done to them, and it moves into those cracks. It does not create the damage, it just harvests what was already there. Edmund was already someone the system had failed and abandoned. The scare didn't make him angry. It found his anger and weaponized it. Racist systems don't need to conjure evil from nothing. They create the conditions for it and then they act surprised when it grows. They break people, walk away, and then point at the broken people and say, see, this is why they couldn't be trusted. This is why they need to be controlled. This is why the system is necessary. The scare is that cycle made into a supernatural force. And it targets Dawn specifically because she is the living accumulation of everything that has been suppressed across her entire family bloodline. This is the part that makes them something more than just two good horror shows. Season 1, 1953, a black family trying to claim the American dream and being systematically destroyed for it. Season 2, 1991, the granddaughter of that family navigating different institutions but the same underlying violence. The supernatural threat connects them. The Black Hat Man from Season 1 and the Scare from Season 2 are part of the same mythology. The same force, the same entity that feeds on what racism produces, just operating in a new era with new methods. Because that is how racism actually works. It does not die, it evolves. It moves from covenants and property deeds to unwritten codes in police departments, and it moves from white women with lawn chairs to colleagues with performance reviews. The packaging changes, the content is the same. And the evil that feeds on it just follows the food. The ending of Season 2 is not a clean victory, and I think that's the right choice. Yes, Dawn survives. She stops the immediate threat. She kills McKenna. She confronts Edmund and the Scare. She's still standing. But she had to learn that her twin brother existed and suffered and became a monster, partly because of a choice that her mother made. She had to confront that institution she gave her career to and would have sacrificed for without hesitation. She had to sit with the fact that the badge on her chest carries the weight of everything the LAPD has done to her community, regardless of her personal intentions. The show doesn't give her a way out of that, but it does give her a choice about what to do with it. And it leaves that choice open, which I think is intentional, because that is where a lot of us live in real life. Knowing the institution is dirty, knowing the cost of staying inside it, and trying to figure out whether there is a way to use the access for good without being consumed by what you're accessing. There is no clear answer. The show is honest about that. I'm gonna keep it real with y'all because that is what we do here on my page. The actress that played both Lucky and Dawn is extraordinary and should have a shelf full of trophies by now. The visual language is beautiful and deliberate. Using horror as the genre for this specific subject matter is exactly right because horror is the appropriate emotional register for what Black Americans have actually lived through. Where Season 2 stumbles a little bit is the middle episodes get kind of murky when the supernatural mystery takes over and the character work slows down just a little bit. Some storylines feel like they needed more room than the season gave them. The pacing is a bit uneven in ways that occasionally undercut the emotional weight. But here's what I want to say. The show is trying to do something genuinely ambitious. It's using genre television to explore the full depth of what racism does across generations in a way that doesn't turn into something comfortable to consume. That ambition will always have rough edges, and I will take the rough edges of a show that is actually trying to say something over the polished smoothness of a show that says absolutely nothing. Now, Season 2 is a show about what gets inherited, what gets buried, what comes back up no matter how many times you try to keep it down. It's about a Black woman carrying a badge that her community sees as a weapon and trying to figure out if there is any version of her that can survive that contradiction. It's about twins, one saved and one sacrificed, and what that sacrifice cost everyone involved across decades. And it's about monsters, yes, real ones and supernatural ones. But the show is very clear that the monsters were made. They were not born from nowhere. They were built by the same America that built everything else in this story. I hope these two videos gave you something to think about. If you haven't watched the show yet, that you go watch it. And if you have, I hope you watched it a little differently the second time around. But let me know your thoughts. What hit hardest for you, Season 1 or Season 2? Drop it in the comments because I genuinely do want to know. Now, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know every single time I upload. And don't act a fool in these comments because just like them demons in Season 2, you can go right on to hell, okay? I'll catch you next time. Peace.